I have walked the long dark of Corvain Hollow 41 times, and 41 times I have brought my pilgrims through without losing one to the cold, the drop shafts, or the wardens. The cold you can prepare for, the drop shafts you can map, the wardens you cannot, because a warden's price changes with the weather of his own mood, and there is no instrument that measures that. My name is Des Aronin. I keep no rank and no uniform. I light the lamps along the tunnel spine under Marrow Hollow Crater, and I walk people through 88 days of night to the transit ring on the far rim, where the ships still take on passengers who can prove they are not fleeing anything worth chasing. Most of my pilgrims are fleeing something. I have never once asked what. That season I had 9 of them. A retired engineer with a bad hip, 2 brothers who did not speak to each other but would not be separated. A woman named Cora with a boy of maybe 6 clinging to her coat, silent in the particular way of children who have already learned that silence keeps you alive. I did not ask her story either. There is a den in the 4th switchback, past the collapsed mineworks, where a pack of Vulkaren have raised litters for longer than the waystation records go back. Long-muzzled, rope-muscled things, built low and quick, with a coat like wet slate and eyes that hold lamplight the way still water holds the moon. The garrison calls them vermin. They raid the ration caches when the caches are careless, which is often, because the garrison is careless about everything except its own comfort. I started leaving them the gristle ends 11 months back, not out of any plan, just because I did not like watching hungry things stay hungry when I had scraps going to waste anyway. I left the food. I said nothing to them, and for a long while they took it and vanished before I'd gone 3 steps. Then one evening the Alpha didn't run. She sat at the edge of my lamp's reach with her ears up and her weight forward, reading me the way you'd read a stranger's hands before you shook one. I told her the only thing I ever tell anything that's deciding whether to trust me. Easy. Nobody's coming for you tonight. I named her Caro, for no reason I can defend, and by winter she had cubs trailing her. 3 of them, a runt I called Wick because he burned brighter than his size should have allowed, and 2 others, Cole and Bristle, thick-shouldered and already too big for their own feet. They watched me from the dark the way children watch a door, waiting to see if it opens the same way twice. It always did. That was the whole of my method. Consistency, not courage. What I did not expect, and what no one at the waystation had a name for, was the walking. It started small, a shadow keeping pace along the upper ledge while I led pilgrims past the flooded gallery, where the footing is bad and a wrong step drops you 40 meters into black water, then 2 shadows. Then, the night the engineer's bad hip gave out on the ice-slick ramp above the 3rd switchback, I looked up from where I'd caught him and found Caro standing 4 meters off, not moving, simply present, the way a held door is present. Her cub sat behind her in a ragged line, watching the 9 of us the way soldiers watch a road they've been told to hold. They did not touch my pilgrims. They did not so much as sniff them. They fell in when I moved and stopped when I stopped, a loose escort strung out along the tunnel's edge. And by the 4th switchback, the 2 brothers who never spoke to each other were both walking a half step closer to me than they had before, which I understood, because there is something in a body that knows when it is being kept. The waystation had a name for the pack too, though not mine. Warden Petron Doss called them a liability. He had orders, or claimed he did, to clear the den before the inspection ship arrived from the capital, so his report could say the tunnels were pacified. Peltz, he told his patrol, within earshot of me on purpose, made a fine exhibit for a man wanting a promotion. I did not argue with him about that. Arguing with Doss only sharpened his appetite. I kept walking my pilgrims and kept leaving my scraps and kept saying the same word to the dark that I had always said, and if the warden noticed that the tunnels under my watch had gone unusually quiet of Vulkaren trouble, he credited it to his own coming purge rather than to anything so unremarkable as a man being kind to something hungry. The trouble came on the 9th night, at the last checkpoint before the transit ring, where the tunnel narrows to a single stair and a warden can stand in the only door there is. Doss was waiting there personally, which told me he'd decided this crossing was worth his own boots. He looked over my 9 pilgrims the way he looked over everything, pricing it. He found Cora and her silent boy last, and I watched him decide they were the softest thing in the group and therefore the easiest. He said the transit fee had changed. He said it changed for everyone but that it changed most, regrettably, for a woman traveling alone with a child, and no papers worth the name. He said it slow, so I would understand it was a choice and not an accident, and he put himself between Cora and the stair, and 2 of his men came up behind him with their hands loose and ready near their belts, the particular readiness of men who have done this before and enjoyed it. Cora didn't cry out, she just went very still, the same stillness her boy had, and I understood in that moment, that stillness ran in that family like a bloodline. I could have argued. Both would have cost my pilgrims time they did not have and given Doss nothing but the pleasure of watching me beg on someone else's behalf, which men like him savor more than the money itself. So I did not argue. I turned half toward the dark behind us, where the lamps thinned into the switchback shadow, and I said the only thing I had ever said to that particular dark, the same 3 words, no different in weight than any other time I'd said them. Easy, nobody's coming for you tonight. Except this time I wasn't talking to something hiding. I was talking to something already close, and it heard the shape of the sentence the way a trained thing hears its own name, and it answered. Caro came off the upper ledge first, low and silent until she wasn't, and her weight hit the stone with a sound like a door slamming somewhere under the mountain. Behind her came the rest of them, not 2 or 3 now, the whole den, a dozen low gray shapes pouring down both sides of the stair at once, filling the narrow space until there was no clean angle left for a man to stand in without a Vulkaren within reach of him. Wick, half-grown and already broad through the chest, planted himself directly in front of Cora's boy, and simply sat, tongue out, tail low but steady, as though he'd rehearsed exactly this. Doss's 2 men had their hands on their belts and nowhere to put them. You cannot draw on a dozen things that have already decided not to attack you, not without becoming the only reason the decision changes. I watched the warden's face do the thing I had waited 11 months, without knowing I was waiting, to see. The certainty went out of it first, then the color, and what was left was a man realizing in front of his own patrol that the tunnels he'd called pacified had simply chosen not to correct him until it mattered. I didn't raise my voice. Loud men are why quiet ones get ignored right up until they aren't. The transit fee, I said, is whatever it was yesterday, and I'd get your men back from that door, Warden, before Caro decides you're still standing in it. He got them back. He got himself back too, faster than either of his men, and none of it needed a growl or a bared tooth to accomplish, because the pack never moved again after that first drop onto the stone. They only stood there, patient as posts, while 9 pilgrims filed past a doorway that had, for one night, stopped belonging to the man who thought he owned it. Cora didn't speak to me at the transit gate. She only put her hand briefly on Wick's head as she passed him, and the boy, silent as ever, did the same, and the cub leaned into both of them like he'd been waiting his whole short life for exactly that. I never saw Doss's inspection ship land, and I never asked what his report said about the state of the tunnels. I only know that the pack still waits for me at the 4th switchback, and that when I say the same 3 words I've always said, something in the dark still comes, not because I trained it to, and not because I ever asked it to guard anyone but itself. It comes because somewhere along the way, without either of us deciding it on purpose, it started counting my pilgrims as its own,